I have here a copy of the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Everybody always forgets about Engels, but I don't know why. Most of these works were co-authored by both Marx and Engels. But anyways, let's start out with a quote here. The first step in the revolution by the working class is to raise the proletariat to the position of ruling class to establish democracy. So, yes, establish democracy. How'd that work out for the victims of the Tiananmen Square massacre from 1989? That was a protest. They were trying to establish democracy under a Marxist state. How ironic. About 10,000 of those democracy protesters were massacred by the Marxist CCP, Chinese Communist Party. So now you're not even allowed to show the picture of the Tank Man, famous Tank Man picture from Tiananmen Square back in 1989. It's illegal now. Can't even show that. It's really gotten to the point in China where the Communist Party bureaucratic class have replaced what Marx was talking about as the bourgeoisie class in the master-slave dynamic. Proletariat is still the proletariat in China, but now, instead of the bourgeois, you have the party class, the bureaucratic class there. Now, at least in the Soviet Union, there was an attempt to at least claim that they're transitioning into where there no longer be a bureaucratic class. This was just a transitory phase. Eventually, it'd be all complete democracy. It was just necessary to have a bureaucratic class. At least that's what they're trying to pull off. That was the propaganda. But it doesn't seem like in China. It doesn't even seem like they're trying to claim that it's that this is transitory. This is the ruling part, members of the Communist Party of China. It doesn't seem like they're even trying to have any pretense of it being a transitory phase. Where now it's the bureaucratic class is the permanent ruling class of China, and everybody else that is not a member of that party are not. They're still the proletariat. They're not the ruling class, even though even though the Communist Party still reveres Marx, they just conveniently ignore Marx's call for democracy and for the proletariat to be the ruling class. That's just out of sight, out of mind. They just kind of ignore that part in the manifesto. Just forget about that. It's just not convenient for them. It's an inconvenient proposition, even though it's central to Marx's ideology. But that's the problem with Marx and Engels. They did not factor in human nature. They did not factor in the fundamental principles of what it means to be human. And if you don't understand that, and Marx did not, then it's impossible to come up with a governing system that is going to work effectively and achieve the goals that is being set out for the political philosopher. If they have a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be human, then they're not going to be able to organize a political system based on those principles, on the principles that they're supposed to be guiding them. Because if people are going to behave the way they are according to their own fundamental nature. And I think a lot of things with Marxism is that people are getting drawn into it because they see them, I think correctly so, as being treated unfairly by the capitalist owner class. They're not getting a share. The workers are not getting a fair share for all their efforts. But then they're thinking in their mind, well, yeah, look at all these nice things that the owners get, and then we're putting all the work in, and what do we get? We have to scrape by, and it's not fair. Now you agree it's not fair, but they're thinking that of the workers, what they have in the mind of the workers is they're thinking, well, there's all these niceties I could have, but they're thinking, well, yeah, the niceties that they could buy in the marketplace, the capitalist marketplace. The workers are getting drawn into Marxism, even though they're not agreeing with the foundational principles and anti-capitalist principles of Marxism. They're getting drawn, but I think that's because the intelligentsia, the intellectuals driving Marxism, they know very well that they're not going to get any adherence to Marxism if they're overtly saying what it's all about, that it's an abandonment completely of capitalism. It's against any kind of market capitalistic economy where you can go out and have choice. Where people, vendors, hawking the wares, providing choice for the consumer, and then I think the vast majority of the proletariat, or the working class, they want to continue having that marketplace that they can go to. They just want a fair share of what the owners are getting in that marketplace, in that capitalist marketplace. They're not interested, the workers are not interested in this Hegelian principles and dialectical materialism of Marx's version of Hegel. It's also esoteric. It's ideology they don't care about. But it's only this intelligentsia, the intellectuals, that are trying to drive this Marxism, trying to bring in adherence to Marxism, trying to bring in more members into Marxism. They're thinking, well, yeah, we're not going to get anybody if we try and talk about historical destiny according to Hegel. This is your destiny. I don't think it's going to draw in many people to Marxism. But so then what's instead is emphasized is how unfair it is. That part of our Marxism is emphasized, and it's kind of just forget about the historical destiny of the Hegelian principles. These esoteric Hegelian principles are ignored, even though they are central to Marxist ideology. And so then, but when trying to recruit working class in Marxism, though, the recruiters just pour on the unfairness part of the capitalistic economy, and just don't tell the workers about this about the history part, historical destiny of Hegelian ideology. So that once they're in there, once they got enough adherents to actually maybe have a revolution or something, such as when it happened in Russia and in China. Well, after that's done with, then you just kind of keep leading the workers down the primrose path. And as you see now in China, the working class proletariat, nothing's changed basically. There's still the underclass struggling to get by, the working class, and now the bureaucratic Communist Party class who are not doing anything. Really, they're not the producers. They're not mixing their labor with the matter that's being produced within they're not they're not actually mixing their labor with the material natural world to create something that goes on to the, which actually does end up going into the capitalist marketplace from China, often here to the U.S. And still, the proletariat there, they still continue to struggle, that are not members of the bureaucratic class, who have replaced the bourgeois class in China. So yeah, nothing really changes, because fundamentally, what's the problem with Marx? Fundamental problem with Marx is he does not recognize that the individual is an individual spirit. We are fundamentally spiritual beings. But Marx, he was only going by the ideology of Hegel, who his book was, most famous book was Phenomenology of Spirit, which was singular, which did not recognize that it's plural spirits. We're all multiple spirits in the world, but with Marx's interpretation of Hegel, he's trying to get the historical movement of humanity as a whole to somehow get to, so through this synthesis, trying to get to the synthesis of merging with the one spirit Borg, to borrow from the Star Trek, the Borg Collective. So the one spirit. So that's what, like, Hegel was it was phenomenology of spirit, the one spirit, as though we are not individual spirits, even though we are. Hegel and Marx did not recognize that. They only recognized the one spirit, the Borg Collective. We're all supposed to merge into that eventually through the dialectic of history. And so, of course, you try to tell that to the working class folk, the commoners, the proletariat. They're going to say, what are you talking about? We're not interested in that at all. We just want to be able to meet our basic needs and have a few niceties to enjoy, and have freedom to explore life as we see fit. And so that's what the proletariat wants. They're not interested in the dialectic of history, of this merging with the Borg Collective. They don't want anything to do with it. It's not only they're not interested in it, they're against it. And that's the reality. But these people who are trying to strive for Marxism, they don't get it, or they get it, but they don't care. They are only interested in meeting this Hegelian ideal, and they're willing to deceive the general public about what the final goal is in terms of meeting that, merging with the Borg Collective, as being assimilated into the Borg Collective as the one spirit, where the individual does not count at all, treating the individual as though they have no spirit, even though they are every individual is a unique spirit, a unique special spirit being. But the Marxists, they do not recognize that. And that's the problem. That's the fundamental problem with Marxism. They do not recognize the spirit of the individual. Every individual is a unique and special spirit. And because Marx does not recognize that, Marxists do not recognize that, Marxism is fundamentally flawed, irretrievably and fundamentally flawed, and it shall be completely abandoned and just ignored. We should stop. Stop trying to achieve any kind of Marxism. And there might be a few principles in here and there that Marx and Engels wrote about that I'll agree with, but fundamentally as a system, I'm against it for the reasons I have explained. So that's why I'm against Marxism. I guess that's all I have to say for now. I think I've talked long enough. So if you made it this far and you're still watching, well, thanks for watching.